Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. It started like any other Tuesday afternoon. The sky was layered in soft shades of blue, dotted with scattered clouds that looked like they'd been hand-drawn. I had just stepped out of the dentist's office, routine cleaning, nothing serious, and was expecting to wait for my husband, David, who usually picked me up on his way back from a client meeting. But instead of David's familiar gray sedan pulling up, it was a dark blue SUV. I didn't immediately recognize that slowed to a stop in front of me. The passenger window rolled down, and there he was, Elliot, David's coworker. A quiet, polite man in his late 40s, with kind eyes and a slightly weathered smile. I had met him briefly at a company holiday party and maybe once at our house for a barbecue, but never more than that. He leaned over the passenger seat. "Hey, Mrs. Rowan," he said with a slight chuckle. "David asked me to grab you. He got pulled into a call and won't be free for a while. I was headed this way, so..." There was a pause, and something about it felt both awkward and oddly gentle. I nodded, opened the door, and climbed in. The scent inside the SUV was a mixture of leather, citrusy air freshener, and something faintly masculine, cologne maybe, but subtle. The kind that lingers in the background rather than announces itself. "Hope you don't mind the detour," he added, glancing over with a sheepish grin as he merged into traffic. "Not at all," I said, adjusting my seatbelt. "You're saving me from a half hour of waiting outside with the smell of fluoride in my mouth." He laughed, a real one, not the kind people give out of politeness. Fluoride and sunshine, a lovely combination. For a few minutes, the ride was filled with small talk. Weather, work, how fast the year was flying. I found myself relaxing more than I thought I would. Maybe it was the mellow music playing softly from the radio, some old 70s rock tune I vaguely recognized, or maybe it was Elliot's easy presence. He didn't push conversation but left enough open space for me to feel like I could speak, or not, without pressure. Then the conversation took an unexpected turn. "You know," he said, his voice lower, "I always liked how calm you are. At the holiday party last year, David had just spilled wine on the carpet, and everyone was fussing. You just walked in with club soda and towels like it was nothing. I'd remembered that." I smiled. "Well, after 25 years of marriage, you learn when to stress and when to grab the towels." Elliot smiled back, but something flickered across his face. Some quiet thought, some shift in mood. We stopped at a red light, and I noticed his grip on the steering wheel had subtly tightened. I don't know what made me ask, but I did. "You okay?" He nodded once, then exhaled slowly, almost like he'd been holding something in. "Sorry, that just reminded me of... well, my wife used to do that." There was a silence, but not an uncomfortable one. I didn't know Elliot was married, had been married, I assumed now. I glanced at him gently. "I didn't realize." "She passed 3 years ago," he said, still looking at the road. "Ovarian cancer. It came fast. 1 minute we were arguing about how many throw pillows a bed should have, and the next, everything felt quiet. Too quiet. I didn't say anything right away. The car kept moving. We passed through the tree-lined part of town, where summer's heat made the sidewalks shimmer and lawns smelled freshly cut. "I'm sorry," I said finally, and I meant it. "Thanks," he replied. Then, after a moment, "I don't talk about her much. I guess most people don't know what to say, or maybe I don't want them to." "I get that," I said softly. "Sometimes silence feels safer, but sometimes it just feels lonely." He looked at me for a moment before turning back to the road, and there was a kind of gratitude in his eyes. Not flashy or dramatic, just the quiet kind, the kind that settles behind a glance and lingers. We were halfway home when the rain started, unexpected and sudden. Big, warm drops spattering the windshield. Elliot turned on the wipers, but neither of us spoke for a while. The sky darkened a little, and the hum of the car, the rhythmic sweep of the wipers, and the gentle patter of rain wrapped around us like a blanket. "You know what I miss the most," he said suddenly. "Not the holidays or the photos or even the vacations. It's the small stuff. The way she would leave half a cookie on the counter because she knew I'd eat it. The way she always hummed while folding laundry." I looked at him, really looked. His jaw was clenched, but his voice didn't shake. It was like he was digging through a memory gently, reverently, afraid it might crumble if he touched it too hard. "I still hum when I fold laundry," I said, trying to offer something, however small. He turned his head, and there was a surprised smile there, soft and genuine. "Do you?" "Badly," I admitted. "David teases me about it. Says I have the musical taste of a sitcom mom." That made him laugh again, deeper this time, like something had shifted in his chest. Then, in a silence that followed, I felt it, this warmth blooming unexpectedly in my throat. Not romantic, not lustful, just emotional. A sudden, overwhelming tenderness for this man beside me, for his grief, for his resilience, for the quiet strength he carried around like it was invisible. And then, without meaning to, I started crying. Not loud, not messy, just soft tears that welled up and rolled down slowly, catching me by surprise. Elliot didn't say anything right away. He just glanced over, then gently reached into the center console and handed me a napkin. Not a word, just the offering. I dabbed my cheeks, embarrassed. "Sorry, I don't even know where that came from." "It's okay," he said. "You're allowed to feel things. We both are." The rain had let up by the time we pulled into my driveway. David's car still wasn't there. Elliot parked and turned off the engine. Neither of us moved right away. "Thanks for the ride," I said, voice still thick. "Anytime," he said, meeting my eyes. And for a second, everything paused, like the world itself was holding its breath. Not for anything to happen, but just to acknowledge that something had. Something quiet, something real. I stepped out, the air fresh with rain. As I closed the door behind me, I caught my reflection in the side mirror. Eyes a little red, smile soft, heart strangely full. And that's when I realized sometimes it's the rides you never planned that take you exactly where you need to go. The next morning, I wasn't sure if I'd imagined how deeply the car ride had affected me. Everything in the house looked the same. The framed wedding photo on the shelf, the scent of fresh coffee David always brewed before heading to work, the little notepad I kept by the fridge where I scribbled down groceries and reminders. But something inside me felt different. I found myself lingering over breakfast, rereading a paragraph in the book I'd been ignoring for weeks, my mind still gently circling back to Elliot's words, the way he'd spoken about the little things, the way his voice held emotion without crumbling under it. Later that afternoon, as I watered the plants on the back patio, my phone buzzed. It was a text from David. "Running late again. Can Elliot swing by to drop off the folder you left in the car?" I stared at the message for a moment, my stomach fluttering in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not nervous, just present. Awake. Aware that this next conversation, like the last, might carry something more than expected. And when the doorbell rang 10 minutes later, I took a deep breath and opened the door. Elliot stood there, folder in hand. But his eyes again held something else, something quiet, something familiar. And I invited him in. He stepped inside like he wasn't sure whether he was welcome, though I'd clearly invited him. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he hesitated just past the doorway, fingers still curled around the folder. "Thanks," I said, taking it from him. I didn't even realize I'd left it. Elliot nodded, his eyes flicking toward the living room, then back to me. "You have a really calm home. Peaceful." "It's quieter than it used to be," I replied, motioning for him to sit. "David's been busy lately. Work, meetings, always something. Sometimes I forget what it sounds like to have someone just be here." He sat carefully on the edge of the couch, like someone visiting a library, respectful, contained. I sat across from him in the armchair, tucking my legs beneath me like I always did when the conversation felt like it might go beyond the weather. We were quiet for a moment. The ceiling fan hummed above us. Outside, a bird chirped in the magnolia tree, loud enough to make us both glance toward the window. "I'm sorry if yesterday made you uncomfortable," Elliot said suddenly, voice soft. I shook my head. It didn't. I mean, it caught me off guard, yes, but not in a bad way. He looked relieved, but still uncertain. I've spent so long trying not to talk about her, about Liz. And then, sitting next to you, it felt safe, like I wasn't going to break if I remembered. His words reached me in a place I hadn't visited in a while. That tender spot just beneath the routines, beneath the practiced smiles and polite nods and dinner table conversations about what to watch on TV. "You didn't break," I said. "If anything, you made me remember what it feels like to actually be present with someone." He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time, I saw how tired he was. Not just physically, the kind of tired that comes from carrying something silently for too long. "I was surprised you cried," he admitted gently. "Not because it was wrong, but because it felt like something passed between us, something I didn't expect." I hesitated, my heart picking up just enough to make me aware of it. "I didn't expect it either. I think it wasn't just your story that moved me. It was the way you told it, the honesty, the kindness." He smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. "I don't feel kind most days. I feel like I'm surviving. And sometimes I don't even know why." Those words struck a deep chord in me. I leaned forward slightly, elbows on my knees. "I know that feeling," I said. "Different circumstances, maybe, but the same emptiness sometimes. David and I, we love each other, but life has become routine. Safe, maybe too safe. We don't really talk the way we used to. We pass through the days like we're checking boxes." There, I said it. Not to blame, not to accuse, but just to admit. Elliot didn't judge. He just nodded, like he'd heard the same confession inside his own head 100 times. "I think it's easy to forget," he said slowly, "that we're allowed to feel something deeper. Even if it's not perfect, even if it doesn't come from where we expect." I looked at him, searching for something in his face, maybe permission, maybe clarity. I wasn't sure, but I knew this. There was something unspoken between us. Not romantic, not yet, just something that asked to be acknowledged. "You want some tea?" I asked, trying to bring the moment down gently. His smile widened just a bit. "Sure, tea sounds good." I moved into the kitchen, boiling water, and pulling down the ceramic cups I saved for guests I actually wanted to talk to. The ones with little blue flowers painted near the rim. I heard him shift on the couch behind me, and for a moment, The quiet between us wasn't empty. It was full. I handed him the cup, and our fingers brushed. It was a brief touch, but it lingered in my skin long after. We sat with our tea, sipping in silence. Then he asked, "Did you ever want something different?" The question hovered. I thought of the years, the roles I'd played: wife, mother, hostess, caretaker. The countless times I'd said I was fine, even when I wasn't. I looked at Elliot and gave him the truth. "Yes," I whispered, "but I didn't know what different looked like until yesterday." His eyes held mine, searching, steady. "I think we found something unexpected, and I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." I nodded, heart thudding. "Neither do I." Outside, the sun peeked through gray clouds. Inside, the air felt warm, not from temperature, but from something that had bloomed softly between us. Understanding, connection, and the quiet possibility of more. He left not long after, with a promise to check in later, not as a favor to David, but because he wanted to. I closed the door and leaned against it for a moment, tea still warm in my hands, heart even warmer. I didn't know what came next, but I knew something had changed. And I wasn't afraid of it. The next few days passed slowly, each one stitched with a quiet thread of anticipation. David was swamped at work, often gone before I woke and returning well after dinner. I didn't mind the solitude. Not anymore. It gave me space to think, to feel. Elliot texted every evening, just a few words. "Thinking of you." Today felt a little easier, maybe because of yesterday. Hope your day had some quiet joy in it. I never thought such simple messages could mean so much. But they did. They grounded me, warmed me, reminded me that someone saw me, not just as David's wife, but as a person with thoughts and depth and feelings that reached beyond the roles I'd grown used to playing. It was on Friday afternoon, just before sunset, that he texted again. "Would it be strange if I asked to see you? No agenda. Just a walk, or coffee, or nothing, if that's better." I stared at the screen, heart rising in my throat. I could have ignored it. I could have played it safe. But instead, I typed back. "Meet me at the lake, the bench near the old willow, 6:30. And at 6:30, he was there, waiting. He was already sitting on the bench when I arrived, just as I remembered from our last visit to the lake years ago. The old willow still dipped its branches low toward the water like it was eavesdropping on the breeze. The golden hour sun spilled across the lake's surface, turning everything amber and warm, like a painting that didn't need to be finished to be perfect. Elliot stood when he saw me, brushing his palms on his jeans, though they were already clean. His eyes met mine, not overly eager, not guarded, just open. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he said. "Neither was I," I answered truthfully, stepping closer. "But I wanted to." He nodded, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of pause that allowed you to breathe fully, to notice the way the air smelled like pine and warm grass, and how the wind carried the faintest scent of wildflowers from across the trail. We sat together, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the gentle heat from his shoulder beside mine. "I used to come here with Liz," he said softly, watching the ducks paddle by. "This was our place to be quiet together. We didn't even talk much when we were here. She said it gave her time to think." I glanced at him. There was a reverence in the way he said her name, a kind of gentle honor that told me he hadn't invited me here to replace her. This wasn't about filling a space. This was about sharing one. "She must have been a deep thinker," I said. He smiled faintly. She was. And funny. She had this way of laughing that made everything around her feel lighter. I looked out at the water, letting his words settle. David used to bring me here, too. Before life got noisy. We'd walk, sit, talk about everything and nothing. Now I come alone sometimes. I don't think he's noticed. Elliot turned his head toward me. Do you miss the way things used to be? I thought about that for a long moment. I miss being seen, not out of neglect or cruelty, just out of time. David's still a good man. But we've both been walking parallel paths for years, thinking we're side by side, but really, we're not. I understand, Elliot said. After Liz died, I started noticing all the things we'd done without realizing how connected they made us, and I started seeing the world differently. Everyone rushing, distracted, lost in what's next instead of what's now. I turned to face him more fully. That's how I felt during our ride, like I had stepped out of my life and into something quieter, something that asked me to notice. You didn't ask me questions to fill the space. You just let me be. He didn't respond right away. He reached down and picked up a small stone, running his thumb across its smooth surface before tossing it gently into the lake. The ripples it created fanned outward, catching the fading light. I've gotten good at being quiet, he said, but I think I'd forgotten how to be present with someone who truly listens back. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat forming before I realized it. This wasn't just about companionship. This was about something deeper, a sense of being understood without needing to explain everything, a space where nothing had to be perfect to matter. I think we both forgot that, I whispered. There was a long pause. Then, slowly, Elliot reached out. He didn't take my hand. He just laid his open palm on the bench, close to mine. Not asking, just offering. I looked down at it, then at him. His eyes weren't pleading. They were patient. Soft. He didn't need me to take it. But he hoped I would. So I did. My fingers slid into his, and there was a quiet warmth that radiated between us. Not electricity, not adrenaline. Something steadier. Something that felt like two hearts had leaned slightly toward each other without making a sound. The breeze picked up, brushing the willow's branches along the surface of the lake. A pair of ducks quacked as they took off into the fading sky. We sat like that for a while. No rush, no plans. Do you feel guilty? Elliot asked eventually, voice low. I looked at him, surprised by the question. About sitting here with me, he clarified. About this connection. I breathed out slowly. Part of me does. Not because it's wrong, but because it's different. Unexpected. And it's made me realize how long I've gone without feeling connected to anyone in this way. That makes me feel guilty, yes. But not for being here with you. For ignoring that part of myself for so long. He nodded, eyes misty. I know what you mean. It's not about betraying someone else. It's about remembering yourself and how it feels to be alive again. I blinked away my own tears. Do you think people would understand? I think most wouldn't, but that doesn't mean it's not real. The sun had dipped behind the hills by the time we stood up. I felt reluctant to break the moment, like it might vanish if I moved too fast. But as we walked slowly back to the parking lot, our hands brushed again. This time, it was instinctual when they intertwined. As he opened the passenger door for me, I paused and turned to him. This isn't simple, I said. No, he agreed. But it's honest. And in that moment, It felt like enough. The drive back was quiet again, but not in the same way. This time, it was filled with the unspoken knowledge that something had shifted, that we had crossed an invisible bridge between what was and what could be. When he pulled up to my driveway, the porch light was already on. David's car wasn't there yet. Elliot turned the engine off and looked over at me. "I'm glad you came," he said. I'm glad I said yes. There was a moment when I thought he might lean in. A part of me braced for it, not with fear, but with uncertainty. But he didn't. He just gave me that look again, the one that saw everything and said nothing. I stepped out into the night, air cool and sweet on my skin. Before closing the door, I turned to him. "Will you call me?" "Only if you want me to." "I do." And I meant it. As I stood on my porch and watched his taillights disappear down the street, I felt something new stir in me. Not regret. Not confusion. Just a kind of quiet awakening. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had finally started listening. Days that followed felt oddly suspended, like I was walking through my life, but in a different skin. The routines remained the same. Breakfast at the same time, laundry on Thursdays, dinner reheated because David got home late again. But I was aware of everything in a sharper, more vivid way. The quiet in the house wasn't just absence. It had a shape now, a color, a texture. And beneath all of it was this new, persistent awareness of Elliot. He didn't call immediately, and I appreciated that. It gave me space to think, to feel, to ask myself the kind of questions I'd been avoiding for years. It wasn't about leaving David. It wasn't about starting some grand, forbidden romance. It was about recognizing something deeper. That a part of me had been asleep for a very long time. Not dead, just waiting. And now, Elliot had stirred it awake. 3 days after the lake, I got a text from him. "I saw someone today who reminded me of you. Not the way she looked, but the way she paused when she spoke, like she was choosing each word carefully. It made me smile. Just thought I'd share that. I didn't even have to think before I replied. I've been thinking about you too, in the quiet moments, in the ones that used to feel empty." He asked if I'd like to meet again, just a coffee, no expectations. So we did. It was a small place tucked behind the bookstore downtown, with only 3 tables inside and the soft sound of jazz playing over the speakers. We sat near the window, our mugs between us, steam curling like silk in the warm air. The way he looked at me, calm, attentive, unafraid, it made me feel like I didn't need to perform. I could just be. "Do you feel different?" he asked after a while. I sipped my tea, then met his gaze. Yes, but not in a way that scares me. It's like I've stepped out from behind a version of myself that everyone else thought was enough. He nodded slowly. That version we build to make life easier for others. I smiled. Exactly. And now I'm not sure what to do with that. With this. He leaned in slightly, his voice gentler. You don't have to do anything. Just allow it to exist. We don't need to define it, or shape it, or explain it to anyone. We just need to honor it. And there it was, what I hadn't been able to name. Honor. That's what he gave me. Not temptation, not drama, not even escape. Honor. He saw me fully and didn't ask me to be anyone else. When we parted, there was no kiss, just a long, quiet look as his hand grazed mine and held it just for a moment too long. That night, as I lay in bed next to David, his back turned, soft snores rising and falling, I stared at the ceiling, the room awash in shadows. I didn't feel angry with him. I didn't feel cheated or abandoned. But I did feel like I had outgrown something. Or maybe I had just grown into something else. A week passed. Elliot and I didn't meet again. Not because we didn't want to, but because something in us seemed to understand that whatever this was, it wasn't meant to be rushed. It wasn't a fire to be fed. It was a gentle warmth to be respected. We texted once a day. Simple things. A quote from a book. A photo of the lake at sunset. The sound of wind chimes in the background of a voicemail. And in those little exchanges, I felt more seen than I had in years. Then came the moment that shifted everything again. David came home early. It was unusual. He dropped his keys loudly on the counter, poured himself a drink, and stood at the kitchen window for a long time, not saying a word. When I asked what was wrong, he looked at me for a long moment. "Do you ever think we stopped knowing each other?" he asked. I blinked, unsure what to say. "Why do you ask that?" "Because I realized today, I don't know what you've been thinking about lately, or how you spend your afternoons, or what you dream about at night." I swallowed hard. "Have you wanted to know?" He nodded slowly. Just didn't know how to ask. We stood there in silence for what felt like an hour. And then quietly, I said something I'd never said before. "I met someone." His eyes darkened, but not with anger, with understanding. "Did you love him?" I shook my head. Not like that. I just remembered what it felt like to be alive. He didn't speak, but tears welled in his eyes, not from betrayal, from recognition, from grief over something we had both let go of without even realizing. "I don't blame you," he said. "I think I've forgotten how to see you too." It wasn't an end. It wasn't a dramatic outburst. It was a door creaking open. That night we talked, for hours, not about Elliot, not about the past, but about who we had become, what we had lost, and what we still might find if we could be brave enough to look for it. A month later, I met Elliot again. Not in secret, not in shame, just as a friend, a witness to something real. We walked by the lake, the same bench in view, but this time we didn't sit. "I think something beautiful happened between us," I said. He nodded. "It did, and I think it helped heal something we didn't even know was broken." "Do you regret it?" I asked. "No," he said, "because it was honest, and I think honesty is rare." We smiled at each other, and there was a peace between us. Not sadness, not longing, just peace. When we said goodbye, I hugged him. A long, full embrace that felt like closure and gratitude wrapped in warmth. Then I walked away. And for the first time in years, I walked without questioning who I was or what I deserved to feel. I didn't expect to cry during that ride with my husband's coworker. But I did. And those tears opened a door I didn't know had been closed inside me. Sometimes it's not love that changes us. Sometimes it's the quiet kindness of being seen. And that stays with you forever.